Hallo? Okay. Buenos días, good morning, guten Morgen, bom dia, buonasera. ¿Qué más falta? Bonjour, bonjour. So, welcome to this presentation. First, I must to congratulate the Canary Island international market. 20 years is a long time to working with the Ibero-American cinema. I think it's a great achievement. For me, it's very important to be here. So thank you also for being here. Today we are going to learn a little more about Hubert Bals Fund. Everybody knows what is Hubert Bals Fund? Well, if not, that's why we have here Jeske van der Silke. It's okay? Because I practice all the night. It's very complicated. Okay. The dynamic is very simple. Yeah, she will do a presentation, and after that we will have question and answers. So it's like very simple. So Jeske is the manager of the Hubert Bals Fund in the International Film Festival of Rotterdam. She graduated from Utrecht University with a master's degree in film and television studies. She has been working for the Hubert Bals since 2017 and in charge of the Hubert Bals Fund Plus Europe programs and the overall coordination of the fund. Yeah? So Jeske, here's your audience.
Thank you. Thanks so much for the lovely introduction. It's really great being here. Thanks so much for having invited me and having me here. Like you said, my name is Jeske, and I'm here to tell you a bit more about the Hubert Bals Fund. I will go through the presentation. I brought some images as well of films we supported, and I hope you'll know a bit more about the fund afterwards. And of course, we'll have a lot of time for questions and answers afterwards. So I first want to start with some history of the fund, because we've been around for quite some time. The fund was established in 1989, and it was named after the founder of International Film Festival Rotterdam, Hubert Bals. He founded the festival in 1972, and he was always very concerned for filmmakers, their creative processes. So when he suddenly passed away in '88, it was decided to establish a fund in his name. And there's quite a nice quote in his biography about it, which I'm not sure how well everyone can read, so I'll just read it out loud. Hub had an elemental instinct with a feeling for the aesthetic. He saw the importance of the message of a film within its context and had a strong feeling for its social role in our society. Historically, from a historical perspective, the fund was tasked to support territories that are characterized by a fragile film infrastructure and a lack of freedom of expression. Throughout the years, the fund has had several missions. Some of those you can read here on the slide. Most of them were connected to our main partner for quite a long time, the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs. They came into play in the 1990s, and until 2016 they were the main partner of the Hubert Bals Fund. Because of that support, we adapted a list of eligible countries. We still work with it, and you can find it on our website. It has been adjusted, of course, many times. At the time, it was based on the DAC list, which was a list of how they called it at the time of development countries. At this point, we've added a lot of other countries, also countries that are low ranking on the Free Press Index, for example. And at this moment, we support projects coming from Latin America, Africa, Asia, the MENA region, and some parts of Eastern Europe. what was perhaps also good to highlight that which was very special of HBF, that it was established with a strong mission, really with a goal and for that time it was quite innovative, daring, and it's also a structure that has been copied by other funds as well throughout the years. There are just some films I'd like to highlight. During this year in Cannes and Berlinale, there were quite some films that we supported. You'll see a bunch of them here. We have here Brazil, Baby from Marcelo Catano, Mongrel, All We Imagine Is Light was in main competition and won the grand prize, so that was quite amazing. Achievement of the filmmaker, Payaka Padia. To Land Unknown was from Denmark, Palestine, and Vietnam by Vietnam. Oops. Yeah. Also at Berlinale, there were quite some films that we supported. Pepe from the Dominican Republic, Some Rain Must Fall, China, Sweetie Never Cries from Vietnam, and Argentinian film. It's quite interesting to see the scope of films at the festivals. There are also some statistics always that are just interesting to know about the fund. So we've been here more than 30 years. In those periods of time, we've supported over 1,300 projects. Many of those films had their premiere at IFFR, even winning a Tiger Award, which is part of our main competition at IFFR. And it's good perhaps to highlight a bit the relationship between IFFR and HBF, because there's a lot of collaboration. We are an industry fund nested under IFFR, so there are a lot of intersections, collaborations, but we are not identical. There is a programming team deciding the films of IFFR and HBF team leading HBF. And those, even though there are many collaborations, are separate teams. It's also not mandatory for a film supported by HBF to premiere at IFFR. Some films do, some even get to the Tiger competition, but like you saw just recently, just now, many films go to other festivals as well. Just some examples, started para Morir Joven by Domingo Sotomayor. I've also listed the schemes of support each project received. So you see that this project got development support, but was also Cinemart, which is our market, and NFF plus HBF, which is our co-production scheme. And in a bit, I'll get to all our schemes. We have one development, 2 production, and 1 post-production scheme. This is a project from Gabon that we supported for development a few years ago. Pepe, we already saw it. It won the Silver Bear in Berlinale this year. And Athlete, this is a project from Turkey that we supported for post-production support only last year. It's not finalized yet. So that was a bit about HBF before. Today it is an industry fund nested under IFFR. I explained already a bit the relationship between IFFR and HBF. Our current mission is to promote international talent, sorry, the angle is a bit, and co-productions. We are basing ourselves on the list of eligible countries. Again, like I said, you can find it on our website. Next to that, we are acting also with the Netherlands Film Fund. So if you see NFF, it means the Netherlands Film Fund in the presentation. We are creating long-term synergies between Dutch producers and international co-producers, so to say. And like I said, we have 4 funding schemes, 1 development, 2 production, and 1 post-production. There are also some numbers I brought about last year, just to give you an impression of what we do throughout 1 year. So last year we had about over 800 applications, 1.1 million funds allocated. In total, we supported 26 projects, and it's interesting to highlight that 24 of those were made by first and second time filmmakers. HBF is really focused on emerging talent. Usually it's about more 80%, so last year was quite high, but it's something that's very important to us as a focus. We also support filmmakers that have been around much longer, and we'll have a nice example of that in a bit. And you also see that out of the 26, 16 were female filmmakers and 10 male directors. With filmmakers, we always refer to directors. This is our team. It's quite small, so if you get in touch with us, it's always one of us. And just to highlight briefly our partners, the Netherlands Film Fund is an important one. Creative Europe Media of the European Union. We have a funding scheme under the umbrella of HBF Plus Europe, which is funded by the Creative Europe Media program. We'll get to that in a bit. And Projeto Paradiso from Brazil is also a partner of ours. Then let me get to the funding schemes we have. Like I said, we have 4, and here you see the titles, which are quite extensive. As you can see, I already mentioned the HBF Plus Europe umbrella. The minority co-production is a production fund, and post-production speaks for itself. And the NFF Plus HBF is also a production funding. So let's look at them separately. Our development scheme is for 10,000 euros per project. It's a fixed amount. Per round we receive about, a lot of projects. This year it was actually a new record of more than 800 applications, out of which we can select 10 to 12 projects. So it's highly competitive in that sense. There is quite a specific application process. You'll find the details of that on our website, so I won't dive too much in that now. And just to go back to some film examples, Tiger Stripes, we supported it for development and 2 production schemes, and it was in Cannes last year. Mi Papa El Camion, and this is actually an interesting one to highlight the type of projects we support. As you can see, this is an animation project. Throughout the last years, we've been financing animation more than we used to. And we get a lot of questions about the type of projects that we actually support. And I'm just looking at my notes, so I can be quite precise about it. HBF is often seen as a fund that explores social dramas, coming with a social urgency in our experience. And this was indeed prevailing in our historical context. However, we actually look at genre in a much broader way. We accept many genres, many types of films. And we are actually walking away from the notion that there is the HBF film. So it's very difficult to say in terms of genre, because we've seen thrillers, horror, comedy, but also the social drama, of course. We fund animation. We do have a focus on fiction. We are open for creative documentaries, but there was also the ITVA documentary fund, ITVA Bertha Fund in Amsterdam. Throughout the historical context, we more have a focus on fiction features. There are, however, a few practical things I can say about the projects we do support. Usually there is a financial scope to it, which you can find in our regulations. At this point, we usually support projects with a total budget of around 1.2 million euros. So projects of 2-3 million, it's not something we would consider at this point. And if you're interested more in the type of projects we support, I always suggest to look at the projects we've supported in the past years. On our website you'll find also synopsises and quite detailed information, and it can also be interesting to look at the films CIIF has selected in the past 2 years. Before that it was a little bit different, so therefore it's really the last 2 years, which I think again it shows that intersection between CIIF and HBF. Back to the projects, the last one in this highlight is the report of Sarah and Salim from Palestine. We gave it development support and both are production schemes, and it had its premiere at CIIF, where it was in competition. Our first production scheme is NFF plus HBF co-production. This is in collaboration with the Netherlands Film Fund. It is mandatory to have received development support if you want to be eligible, and you must have a Dutch co-producer that makes the application. We do support matchmaking a little bit, but mostly Dutch producers reach out quite easily. So it is a process that we mostly leave to the projects themselves. It's a grant of 75,000 euros, which you can spend on production and post-production, and 50% has to be spent in the Netherlands. And I now remember that I forgot to mention this for development support. The spending regulations for development support are actually quite flexible. So as long as you can motivate, it has to do with development support, it's fine for us. We often see that it can give a filmmaker some time to fully dedicate to writing the script, location scouting, traveling to festivals and markets. There are actually translations, preparing applications. There are a lot of possibilities you can do with the development grant. So, and for this one, it's really focused on production and post-production costs. We see often that these co-productions are focused on post-production because the post-production facilities in the Netherlands are quite strong, but there are also a lot of options concerning crew, for example. We have 2 rounds per year, select 2 projects. In total, or per round, we receive 5 projects. So in terms of numbers, it's less competitive, but in terms of quality, there's still some competitiveness here. Again, some examples. Arnold is a model student from Thailand. Of course, for development support, because otherwise it would not be eligible for this scheme. And again, it got both our production supports. A lot of films actually that we chose here in the presentation got both production supports. It's not given, it are 2 separate processes, but it just happens a lot. And this film premiered in Locarno a few years back. Ayami from Paraguay is also a good example within this scheme. It was in the IFFR Tiger competition and it won the main prize, the Tiger Award. Our second production scheme is our HBF plus Europe minority co-production, and here we get to the Europe umbrella, if I may put it like that. And I'm just highlighting that because of this European financing attached, the guidelines are a bit differently and should be taken carefully into consideration when you want to apply for the Plus Europe schemes. This production scheme is for 60,000 euros. 25% has to be spent in the applicant country, which should always be a European co-producer, but the other 25% is quite free on how you would like to spend it. It should be allocated to production and post-production costs. And we have around 40 to 50 eligible applications per year, out of which we select, 4 to 8 projects per year. There is one Creative Europe regulation specific to this scheme that I want to highlight, which is the eligibility period. We are bound to a certain time frame for this grant. So if you would receive it for your project, the eligibility period starts and takes between 1.5 to 3 years. We always announce it on our website, the length before you apply, so you can take it into consideration. Within that time frame, the film must be finalized, and we would also need an accountant's report on the costs you've made. And it's very specific. So we've also had projects that were not able to meet that criterion, and then we had to withdraw our funding. Luckily, it doesn't happen a lot. We'd like to avoid it at any cost, but it's just good to mention that it's really important, even more than with our other schemes, that the project, in terms of timeline, should be a fit. Some examples are City of Wind from Mongolia. Again, development support, both our production schemes, and it premiered in Venice last year. And this is the example I was referring to a while back, La Practica by Martin Reitman. We supported this project in 2017, but it wasn't the first time we supported him. I think it was actually early 90s, 90 or 91, that we supported him as well, one of our first Argentinian filmmakers. So we've been around for some time supporting him, so it was great. I think this was his 6th or 5th film, to be able to support this one as well. So it's quite rare, but it does certainly happen. Our final scheme, the 4th one, also within the HBF plus Europe umbrella, is our post-production scheme. it's very much of our DNA to offer post-production, so we've had it around for a long time, but in this form only since 23. Again, it's a 60,000 euro grant, only to be spent on post-production. You must have a rough cut available if you want to apply, because we take that into consideration, and throughout the process you can sometimes update it. And as you can see, we have about 30 eligible projects, out of which we can select 4. And again, the Creative Europe regulations, which are a bit differently, apply with the time frame, the eligibility period. So please do take that into consideration if you would like to apply for this one. If you have any doubts about it, you can always reach out and we can give some advice in that direction. I only brought one example, I think, this one, Holy Electricity. It got development support and post-production, so no production support. And it premiered this year in Locarno and Sarajevo. And then it's perhaps also good to say something about who assesses the projects and how we assess a project, what we are looking at. For our development and our HBF Plus Europe schemes, we make use of an external committee, sales agents, distributors, programmers from IFFR or abroad, filmmakers, producers. It's quite a varied bunch of people that we that supports us in assessing the projects. It's also different per round, the group of people that are assessing our applications. For NFF plus H, we have the co-production scheme in collaboration with the Netherlands Film Fund. It's HBF staff and Netherlands Film Fund staff that assess the applications. Whoops. For all our projects, it's really the most important thing we look at is the artistic quality of a project. For us, we are really looking for stories from filmmakers, so the director is really at the core of a project for us. It's not possible to apply without a director with HBF. So for example, director statement is always something we look at. Why do you want to make the film, and also some on visual approach. Those 2 elements are always good to include. Also previous work of a director has some weight for us, even though it can just be a few minutes, but there has to be some. That we take into consideration. Next to this artistic quality, we also look at the financial viability of a project. For development support is a bit of less importance, and for production and post-production it has, of course, a different weight again. For development support it's not necessary to co-produce, but for the production, post-production schemes, they are exclusively focused on co-production. So for the production, post-production schemes, we also look at the finance plan. What is the backup? What's the co-production strategy? And some extra things which you will find on our website. But next, this artistic quality is always really key for us. Then all the deadlines of this year have passed, unfortunately. We are currently reviewing the deadlines for next year, and we will announce them during IFFR next year, which will be in the first week of February. We are quite active on our Facebook channel. IFFR also has an Instagram channel, and our professionals, we always refer to us as pro, but professionals. The newsletter is also interesting to subscribe to if you want to know more about that, and then you won't miss it for sure. That was it. What I wanted to talk to you about with the fund, and I'm actually very curious about any questions you might have.
Thanks. Yes, Kay. I definitely think that on your next call you will have many projects for this audience, including me, of course. Well, I have a question, yeah, because I think your presentation was very clearly. But what do you think are the weaknesses of some projects that you receive for Latin America, for example? You know, what is there?
That is a good question. I think sometimes what we encounter it's very on a very practical basis. So translations are sometimes difficult. We work with a very international crew, so therefore we require English applications, which so everyone reads the same application, has the same thing to assess. In the past we have been open to French and Spanish, but in the past few years we've made the choice to only align to English applications. I think something else is that what sometimes is missing is a sort of an explanation or some attention between the previous work of the director and this project. Sometimes it makes a lot of sense, it's very much in the same line, then I mean no explanation is needed. And sometimes it's very differently. And then our committee is just really curious to hear more about that and the plans of the director. So it's really about on a practical level. Okay. That we sometimes
and the focus on the director also is good for.
Yeah. So we still sometimes receive applications that have no director, which we just don't allow. We also allow applicants to apply once, and it's just because of the high number of applications. Because if we would allow resubmissions, it would not be possible on a longer term to maintain all the things we have to do with the small team we have. So that's also something to, you can always reach out to us, ask some questions about it. But because of this high workload, we are quite strict usually in our communication, that we don't provide feedback even though we know how valuable it is. There's just limited time, but you can always get in touch and try, and we can always see if we can make some exceptions. So that would also be my in-between advice. Even though the communication is like that, you can always try and to get in touch.
And using the experience of the director is important to
yeah.
the...
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that it must that there have to be 3 films that screen on Venice. Not at all. We really look at how we perceive and how our committee perceives the film. So it doesn't really matter if the film hasn't screened anywhere or didn't win any prizes. That doesn't matter for us. It's really about the quality of a project and the abilities of the director. A few years ago, or it happens quite often, that we support a filmmaker that just made a short of 3 minutes that didn't do anything, but we just thought it was amazing. We saw a great director there and we decided to support it. And then we have some other programs within IFFR in which we try to boost the career of this filmmaker. There are some interesting examples of which a finance plan has just been completely of HBF contributions, so to say, and one private investment, and that's it. And it happens. I mean, not often, but it certainly happens. So I think that's also important to keep in mind. It's not necessary to have as many accomplishments. It's really about the work itself that we look at.
Okay, my last question before I pass the microphone to the people. In case that opting for co-production with Dutch, yeah, do you have some guide to contact producers there, or I don't know, some networking events in Netherlands to be in contact with producers? Because not so many people know producers in
Yes.
Netherlands or directors in Netherlands.
We do. We have a quite a practical approach to that. So once we support projects for development, those are the projects that are eligible for the NFF plus HBF co-production scheme with the Netherlands Film Fund. So what we do is that we have what we call the NFF plus HBF guide. It's a document that you already find on our website on the page of that specific scheme. We get in touch with all supported projects, include them if they want, and that document is sent out to Dutch producers, where you can find all contact details of the producers that are interested in co-producing HBF films. And that is what it is mostly about in what we give out in terms of networking. We feel that co-production is a very personal process. It's like the cliche that you hear a lot, it's like a marriage. And even though we know the filmmakers, we know the projects, and we know the Dutch producers, it's very difficult for us to say, this should be your producer, because it's also very much about the personal connection. So we offer contact details, and all the Dutch producers are usually present at the International Film Festival Rotterdam if you want to meet them. But there are a lot of contact details. They travel quite a lot, so it's quite easy to meet them at several festivals. So that's about our approach to support in that direction. And I should say the Dutch producers are also quite active in searching for HBF projects they'd like to co-produce, because for them the scheme is quite interesting as well. So
okay,
yeah.
That's good. Now we open to Q&A question of the. Let me put the micro there because we don't have another mic.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I did understand what Luis asked and what you answered with the application from Latin American applicants, Latin America projects, that the previous work of the director doesn't meet the new project. It does, that there is no correlation. It must have a correlation with the previous work to the next project, or it can be, or it depends on the project.
It always depends on the project. There doesn't have to be a correlation at all, but I think it's important for the committee to understand the line of work of the director. So it's good to consider if you need to clarify some things on the background of the director in relation to the project you're applying for. Because that's something we see that really can strengthen your application. Also because we put a lot of weight to the previous work of the director. Sometimes a dossier doesn't tell us very much, even though there are many pages of text, and then you see your previous work and it all falls into one place. But that doesn't count for all projects. It's not for all projects, which is totally fine. And if that is the case, then it's just good to consider how can I make that clear? Because as a filmmaker, you're working with your project for years. You know every detail of it. And the committee has to decide on what they read. And things can be lost in translation. We see that. It happens. It's very difficult to avoid it. So therefore, it's just good with that also in mind, considering the weight we put on the director, the statements, the previous work, to kind of consider, did I miss something? Should I explain something extra? Is it clear for someone that doesn't know the project?
And I have another questions, like when you do like this short list of projects that might have the funding recommendation, do you get in contact with them to maybe like meet in person and to explain more, or
I can explain a bit about the development selection process. So the first phase is filling out basically an application form, director statement, synopsis, previous work. It's very much for us to look at all the applications in quite a swift manner, so we can keep the pace, not taking a year for assessing all applications, especially if we receive 800 plus. So within this first phase, we do that to bring down from 800 to about 200. Of those 200 projects, we request a dossier. We say that means the projects are pre-selected, but for us that's just a term. It doesn't have to do anything with a chance of being selected. For us it just means that we want to read the dossier of those projects. And out of those 200 dossiers, we make our final selection. Throughout the process, the project team is welcome to get in touch with us over email about any updates or changes the project has gone through. But other than that, we don't get in touch with projects during the assessment period.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. Just a quick question. When you evaluate the projects, do you take into consideration the environmental impact of these projects?
Yeah, good question. This is a topic that has become more and more important for us over the course of the last few years. For development support, it's not really a focus yet. It could come in the future, but for now, not yet. It's really a topic that is important for us for production and post-production because the most things happen there in terms of carbon footprint. So especially for the HBF Plus Europe schemes, the production and post-production applications, we ask for a specific document explaining your impact and your vision from the project, from the producers on that topic. For NFF Plus HBF, I think it will come as well in the future, but it's not yet as of now, so it's really within our HBF Plus Europe programs that it's a very important topic. Of course, environmental impact is a very broad term. It's not just about carbon footprint, I think. So this is for us also a work in progress, how to work with this. And I think in our regulations we try to be very specific about what it means for us and what we require from project applicants in their application.
Thank you.
The topic of the film? No, everything is, yes, please, everything is, we're open to every topic, yeah. And also, it's very much in the DNA of IFFR and HBF for more experimental films. Not that we're not doing more conventional cinema, but experimental crossovers, we're very open to that as well. Hybrids, yeah. Well, I mean, we'll be around today, tomorrow, for if you have any questions. What I didn't include in the presentation is our email address, which is you can find on our website, and it's very simple. It's just hbf@iffr.com. That's it. So if you want to reach out, please do, and I'll be here for any questions.
Please, we need to see more Dutch films. We need to be in contact with I know. I know once David Verbeek.
Yeah.
Great. So, no more questions. I ask for applause, please, to our guest, Jeske van der Silke. Thank you very much.